Okay, let's take a look at how we can access our form and do various things with it inside this member edit form. So let's head back to VS Code and we'll take a look at our member edit component. Now the first thing we need to do is make this form an Angular form. So what we need to do is we're going to give it a template reference variable. So we use the hashtag and we're going to call it edit form and set this equal to an ng form. And what we also want to do is create a method in the component so that we can actually submit some data. So let's go to our member edit component and we'll add a method inside here called update member. And we don't have the service method inside here at the moment, which is fine. So what we'll do is we'll just console.log list.member for the time being. And what we'll also do is just add a toast to notify the user that the update was successful. So it's getting busy at the top, but I'm just going to also bring in the private or the toaster service. So I'm going to say private toaster and get the toaster service. And let's bring this down and move this across. And what we'll do is if they've updated their profile successfully, we'll just say this.toaster and we'll say success. And we'll say profile updated successfully. So we'll head back to the form and we'll add an ng submit method inside here. So we'll say ng submit equals and then we'll say update member. But where's our button for this form? Our button is not inside our form. So how, when we click on this particular button, is it going to be able to submit the data? Well, at the moment it can't. If I go and open a console and we click on Save Changes, well, this button doesn't do anything. It's got no idea about our form because it's not inside our form. And it also doesn't have a type of submit, but even if it did, this wouldn't change the fact that we can't submit a form, or this button's not going to do anything, even if I make changes outside of the form. It doesn't do anything. So what we need to do is hook up the button to the form, and one way we can do that is to give the form an ID property. So we'll say ID equals and we'll call it edit form. And then what we can do with the button is give it a form property so it knows what form it's attached to. So we'll say button form equals and we'll just say edit form. And now if we go back and test this, what we'll find is that even if we make some changes and click on save changes, now we get the update method being called and we can see the properties inside here for the member. So far so good, but what we also want to do is make sure that this alert box is only displayed if the user has actually made some changes. And I'd prefer it if this text was a bit more centrally aligned, and this extra P tag is unnecessary in this case. So we can remove this and this will take away that problem, and that's a bit more like it. Now it's central in here. So we only want to display this if a user's been tapping away on the form and they've made changes. And I've just noticed that we've got two components that are connected and doing the same thing. So let's adjust that at the same time, and inside the form one of these is going to have the same name, and this should be member.interests. The dangers of copying and pasting. So back to displaying this alert if the form is dirty. So what we can do, since we've got access to our edit form here, we've also got access to the form elsewhere inside our template. And what we can do is we can come up to this alert and we can say, give it a condition. So we can say ang if, and we can say edit form, which we should have access to here, and then we can check the dirty property. So if the form is dirty, then we're going to display the alert. And if we go back and take a look, then we can see no alert at the top. But as soon as we start typing, then the alert button pops up. And we could also do a similar thing for the Save Changes button. If we go and take a look, we can see this is always available. Even if I refresh the form, then we want to disable this unless changes have been made. So what we can do is we can go to our button and we can make it disabled. So we'll add square brackets and say disabled, and then we can give this an expression. And we only want to display this if or make it available, or not disabled, I should say, if the edit form dirty, and we want to put the not operator on here because we want this button disabled if the form is not dirty and enabled if it is dirty. So if we go and refresh the page again, what we should find is that our button is now disabled, but if we start typing, then we can now see we've got the Save Changes option. But what we've also got here is our alerts and our button available. Even though we've submitted our changes, what we need to do is reset our form state. So in order to reset the form state, we need to do that inside our component. And what we can do is this template reference variable, this edit form, we can also get access to this inside our component. And what we can do is we can go to our member edit component, and inside at the top here in the class properties, what we can use is view child, and we specify the child selector that we're looking for, and in this case it's going to be our edit form, and give it a name that we can use inside our component and give it a type of ng form. And this gives us access to this template form inside our component. So what we might want to do, for instance, is after we've updated our member, what we can do is we can say list.edit form, and we can say reset. And in order to keep and preserve the values that we have in our form, what we'll do is we'll pass in list.member. And this is going to be the updated member after we've submitted our form. But we don't have the API functionality yet, so this is all a bit of fakery. But if we go back and once again refresh the page, and let's just take out all of this text and say test. So we see the alerts, we see the buttons available, and if I click save, profile gets updated, the alert goes away, and our button resets to how it was before. Be careful with the names of the properties in the form as well, by the way, because the name, even though it feels like it doesn't do anything, if I was to change looking for with a capital F to looking for with a lowercase f, because we don't really see the purpose of this name, we don't seem to interact with it in any way, and we don't even give it the name of the object that we're using, then you'd say fair enough. But if I go back and I make a change to this looking for property and then I click save, then our data disappears. So that name property does do something for us, and Angular uses this name property to track the property inside the form. Our ng model gives us the binding, and the name property is used in the background so that when we do update our form, then Angular's going to, or reset our form, then Angular's looking for this name, and it wants it to be the same, obviously, as the property that we're updating. So this has to be accurate. And if we go take a look, make sure that everything's back to normal, I'll just refresh the page, and I'll type in something in this field, then we get the data preserved. So this is all well and good, but what about the situation where a user spent ages typing out SD on their form, and then they go and click elsewhere, and they're like, oops, and then they want to go back and edit their profile. We've lost all of that information. And at this point, a user could be quite angry. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at a way that we can control that and give the user a prompt if they have indeed clicked away from our page. Okay, what we're going to take a look at now is giving the user a notification so that if they've made some changes, they click away from the component and then come back again, we give them a prompt or some notification that warns them that they're about to lose any changes that they've made. Even though we've gone to the effort of giving them an alert box, users will be users, and they may accidentally or on purpose click away and go somewhere else. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at the options we have to help the user out here. And what we're talking about here is the opposite to the can activate. We're going to look at can they deactivate this route. So what we'll do, we'll head back to VS Code, and what we're going to do is open up our terminal once again, and we're going to cd up into the guards folder, and I'll just clear the screen. So this is where we're going to create it. And what we'll use is we'll say ng guard, and we'll give it a name of prevent-unsaved-changes. and we'll skip tests and press return. And this time what we want to do is press space on can activate and press space on can deactivate and press return. And this goes ahead and creates our new guard. So let's go take a look and see what we've got from this. So inside the guards folder, let's open up our prevent unsaved changes guard. Now we've got access to all sorts of things inside here. So we're going to implement the can deactivate interface, and then we've got our method inside here. Now we can access the component that we're inside in this case, and what we want to do is give this our member edit component, because this is going to give us access to our edit form, because we're going to need to check the status of the form inside here. And we don't actually need anything else. We don't need any of the router state. So what I'm going to do to tidy things up is remove all of that. And what we're going to return from this is just a simple Boolean. So I'm also going to remove everything other than the Boolean from here. And we can move this up onto a single line just to keep things tidy. So we've got access to our component. So what we can do inside here is we can check the components and the edit form and see if it's dirty. And if it is dirty, then what we're going to do is, for now, we're just going to use a simple confirm from JavaScript. And we'll give it a message saying, are you sure you want to continue? And then we'll say any unsaved changes will be lost. And this will give them an option to say yes or no. And if they click yes, then we'll return true to say that yes, we can deactivate this component. And if they click no, obviously we're not going to return true and they're going to stay on the form. So what we do then is we go to our app routing module, and we're getting a bit busy at the top here. So I'm just going to close a bunch of things down, and we'll go to our app routing module. And what we want to do is in our member edit component, we're going to say can deactivate, and we're going to specify the prevent unsaved changes guard. And then what we can do is go back to our browser, and let's just refresh the page, make sure things have reset. And if I start typing, then we see the information, and if I click away, then we get the prompt saying, are you sure you want to continue? Any unsaved changes will be lost. And if we click cancel, we stay on the form. And if we try that again and click OK, then we do go away from our form. What this doesn't stop someone from doing though, if I do the same again, if I then decide I'm going to go to Google now, for instance, and press return, then we don't get any prompts. And we go back and we've lost our changes again. And that also applies if we close the tab down, or we close the browser down, or we do anything outside of our Angular application. So can we give the user a notification if they do that? Well, technically yes we can, and let's go take a look. So let's go back to our member edit components, and what we'll do is underneath the user we can add something called a host listener. So what we'll do is we'll use the decorator at host listener, and if we look at the description for this, this is the type of host listener metadata decorator that binds a DOM event to a host listener and supplies configuration metadata. Angular invokes the supplied handler method when the host element emits the specified event and updates the bound element with the result. That actually sounds a bit complicated, but what this allows us to do is access our browser events. And the browser events that we want to access is the window before unload. And then what we can do is give this an event. So we'll say, in quotes, we'll say $, and then event. And then what we can do is say unload notification, and then we can say event of type any. And what we'll do inside here is we'll say if this.editForm is dirty, then we're going to say $event.returnValue equals true. And with this in place, we'll go back to the browser once again, and the user's been busy typing away SD. And if we attempt to close this tab, now we'll get a notification that's saying changes that you made may not be saved if we leave the site. And again, we get the option to cancel and stay where we are. So we do have access to browser events as well from Angular via the HostListener that we've just looked at here. So if we want to do something before the browser's closed, then we've got an option to do so via this HostListener. Oh, and by the way, before we go, if I do the same again, you're probably thinking, that doesn't look great. Is there anything I can do to style this? And no, not for this one. You're also probably thinking, that doesn't look great. Is there anything I can do to style this? And for this one we can, but I'm not going to do it right now. We're more concerned with the functionality at this stage. And later on, then we're going to introduce modals. And we could swap this for a modal. And before we publish, we'll tidy up and deal with this. But I can't promise you we're going to deal with the browser events. They're very browser specific. What we'll take a look at next is persisting the changes that we've made here.